When I saw my best friend's Instagram post of her sitting in my boyfriend's car again, a flood of caring messages from Justin popped up on my phone. It's raining hard. Don't forget your umbrella. The temperature dropped today. Wear a jacket. Don't walk through the garage when you get back. The water is freezing and the floor is slippery. Drink some hot tea. Your hands and feet get cold easily. Keep warm. Looking at the screen full of sweet words, I thought of Sophie's bright, smug smile on my Instagram feed. Just Dr. Justin doing his daily duty of pampering his girlfriend's bestie. Chauffeur service in a storm. Not a single drop of rain touched me. Today's score, A+. My phone kept buzzing with new texts. I didn't open them. Instead, I calmly opened my email and replied to the relocation offer that was about to expire. I'll take the Chicago transfer next Monday. Then, I turned around and took a route with fewer puddles. On a rainy day, I could walk home by myself. Even with an umbrella. The storm was too fierce. By the time I got home, I was soaked to the bone. I pushed the door open, and the hum of a hairdryer filled the air. Sophie was sitting on the sofa, wearing nothing but her lace bralette. Standing behind her was Justin, gently drying her hair. Every move, every touch was filled with tenderness. The atmosphere in the living room was so intimate that neither of them noticed me walking in. Justin sighed softly. Which hair oil do you want? The rose scent. Sophie giggled, her voice dripping with sweetness. Use your favorite scent. Justin expertly picked out the oil, squeezed it into his palm, and carefully massaged it into her hair. He held her hair as if it were the most precious treasure in the world. I stood there frozen. My wet clothes clung to my skin, freezing and sticky. Sophie saw me first. Her eyes curved into a smile, and she let out a soft laugh. Chloe, why are you just getting back? Is it pouring outside? Why are you completely soaked? 3 questions in a row. I didn't even know how to answer. Justin's hands paused. He looked at me, frowning slightly. Didn't I tell you to wear a jacket and bring an umbrella? Did you forget again? For Sophie, he provided a door-to-door chauffeur service. For me, he only offered cheap text reminders. Sensing my cold gaze, Justin stiffened. He offered a clumsy explanation. Sophie got off work early, so I picked her up first. Besides, you've always been independent. You can handle yourself. A cold, heavy sensation traveled from my skin straight to my heart. I set my umbrella down and took off my ruined, waterlogged heels. I looked at him. Justin, let's break up. With a sharp crash, the bottle of hair oil slipped from Justin's hand and shattered on the floor. The strong scent of roses instantly filled the room. Justin knit his brows, his eyes locked onto me. Before he could speak, Sophie stood up. She rushed to explain, her voice frantic. Chloe, it's all my fault. I forgot to tell Justin to pick you up. I got a few drops of rain on me downstairs, so he rushed to dry my hair. He just couldn't leave. Please, don't be so dramatic. Don't pick a fight with him again, okay? I stared at Sophie, completely numb. 6 months ago, she got divorced. She had been a stay-at-home wife for 3 years and ended up with nothing. In the middle of the night, she sat on a curb, crying over the phone, completely wasted. It was me who left my work behind to bring her home. It was me who took the heat to get her a job at my company and taught her everything step by step. And now? Her eyes showed fake apology, but the corners of her lips were curled up. I suddenly felt a chill run down my spine. I pushed past her and walked toward the bathroom. Justin grabbed my arm tightly. His voice was cold. Just because you got a little wet, you're taking your anger out on me? And now you're giving Sophie attitude? Chloe, are you seriously doing this? I stared at the bathroom sink. In it sat a pair of lace panties, soaking in soapy water, half-washed. My tightly suppressed emotion snapped. Like a crazy person, I smashed everything on the counter. Then, I grabbed the wet lace panties and threw them right into Justin's face. Am I doing this? How could I compare to you, Justin? You're literally hand-washing another woman's underwear. Are you out of your mind? Slap. Before I could finish, a sharp pain flared across my cheek. Justin had snapped. Chloe, watch your mouth. Don't forget that you're just an unwanted foster kid who has nobody. After the slap, Justin froze. I did, too. Panic flashed in his eyes. He reached out to grab my hand. Chloe, let me explain. But he didn't get to finish. Sophie grabbed his arm. Her eyes were red, looking small and helpless. Justin apologized to Chloe. She was shivering, and Justin immediately forgot about me. He threw one last look at me. Then, he let out a cold laugh, took Sophie's hand, and walked out the door without looking back. Who cares? I don't owe her anything. Before the door closed, Sophie turned to look at me. Her voice was as gentle as ever. Chloe, don't be mad. Just let Justin cool down. I'll make him come back and apologize to you, okay? The door slammed shut. With a high fever burning inside me, my legs gave out. I collapsed onto the messy floor, shivering violently as waves of dizziness hit me. I fumbled for my phone and dialed his number repeatedly. No one picked up. By the time the ambulance arrived, I used the last bit of my strength to unlock the front door. Then, my mind went black and I collapsed. In my semi-conscious state, I heard the EMT trying to call my emergency contact. Justin's voice sounded faint, but pierced my ears like needles. "Stop acting, Chloe. Is playing victim your only trick?" When I woke up again, it was past midnight. There was not a single text from Justin. In my call log, there were only dozens of unanswered calls I made before I passed out. The contact name, my beloved husband, on the screen felt like a cruel joke. The emergency room was empty. I curled up on the cold chair, my hand aching from the four. Just then, a commotion came from the hallway. Through the glass door of the ward, I saw them. Sophie was covered in tears, shaking her head. "I'm pregnant. We can't keep this baby, Justin. We can't. I can't betray Chloe any more than I already have." Justin held her tightly against his chest, his eyes filled with pain, conflict, and longing. Finally, his voice broke. "But I can't let it go." Sophie looked up, her eyes filled with desperate hope. "Then what about Chloe?" Justin fell silent. After a long time, he let go of Sophie. He closed his eyes in despair and slowly got down on his knees before her. "I'm sorry." Sophie stiffened, her gaze turning cold. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. It was a message from her. It was a photo of Justin kneeling before her, looking utterly devoted. "Chloe, I tried to convince Justin. He always listens to me, but this time he refused. Love doesn't care who got here first. Step aside and let us be together, okay?" Staring at the text, I wanted to laugh. We had known each other for 20 years. It felt like this was the first time I actually saw who Sophie was. I dragged her out of the misery of her divorce. I brought her into my home. Because I worried she would feel lost in a new city, I let her move into the apartment I shared with Justin. I even let Justin, who is a licensed therapist, counsel her and help her through her depression. She once held me, crying and shaking. "Chloe, I swear, I will never betray you in this lifetime." And now, she was pregnant with my fiancé's baby. She told me love had no order. She asked me to let them be. But who was going to make up for the 10 years of love I gave him? My vision blurred. I ripped the 4-needle out of my hand and walked out. The emergency hallway was empty now. I crouched on the floor, the fever taking over my body again. It wasn't until the next morning that the doctor finally let me leave. As expected, Justin didn't come back all night. I pulled out my suitcase and started packing my things. Just then, Sarah from HR called. "Chloe, did you make a mistake? Why did you send me a resignation letter?" I froze. "Your profile has already been transferred to the Chicago branch. I don't have the authority to process your resignation here, so I rejected your request. But seriously, if you leave, so many people are going to fight for your position." My nails dug deep into my palms. In my inbox, the rejected resignation email was glowing on the screen. The reason was short and clear. Resigning to get married and focus on family. Cannot balance work and personal life. Attached to it was also a recommendation letter. A letter recommending Sophie to take over my position. The wording and tone were exactly Justin's. Sarah's voice continued on the other end of the line. "The director wanted to send you to manage the branch before, and you refused. Why the sudden change of heart?" I stared at the black text on the screen, my voice completely devoid of emotion. "It's nothing. I just changed my mind." The apartment door suddenly burst open. Justin stood there in a sharp suit, holding a massive bouquet of red roses. A group of our mutual friends rushed in behind him, cheering. Justin pulled out a stunning diamond ring, dropped to one knee, and looked up at me with deep devotion. "Chloe, marry me. Let me take care of you. I know you've always wanted to go to Tahiti for our honeymoon. I already booked the tickets. We'll leave right after the wedding, okay?" The crowd roared, chanting, "Say yes. Say yes." Everyone's eyes were on me. Family, friends, a proposal, flowers. This was the proposal I had dreamed of for years. I should have been thrilled, crying tears of joy. But I felt absolutely nothing. He logged into my email and threw away my career just to give it to Sophie. And then, he used a lazy, cheap proposal to tell me he would take care of me. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was another text from Sophie. Justin said he would take responsibility for the baby. "I get the marriage license and your job. To make it up to you, he's giving you the wedding ceremony. But I don't want that. Chloe, I suffered so much in my last marriage. I have nothing. You feel sorry for me, don't you?" Following the text was a video. In the video, Justin's eyes were red as he grabbed Sophie, forcing a kiss on her. Even though she pushed him away, he kept chasing her. Again and again, until finally, Sophie melted into his arms and they kissed passionately. The corner of my mouth twitched. I opened Sophie's latest Instagram post. I looked at Justin and asked, She really is the perfect one to marry and have a baby with, isn't she? Is that why you had to steal my job and give it to her? Justin's expression froze. A wave of panic, which I had never seen before, washed over his face. He stared at the photo Sophie had just posted, standing right in front of an OBGYN clinic. His eyes turned blood red. Before I could say anything else, Justin leaped to his feet, pushed past the crowd, and ran out. He ran so fast, as if his life depended on it. Everyone thought I would be devastated after being abandoned by my long-term boyfriend at my own proposal. The look in their eyes was full of pity. But I just calmly watched the bouquet of roses get tossed into the corner, trampled and ruined. Justin was my college senior. Back then, he worked part-time at the campus counseling center. During my second month of college, I called his line in the middle of the night. Eventually, Justin became my personal therapist. That was the time I depended on him the most. I opened up my heart, showing him every scar of being an abandoned foster kid who struggled to survive in an orphanage. He held me, his eyes red with tears. Chloe, from now on, I will be your family. The family you chose yourself. I will never leave you. It took Justin 2 years to heal me, and I spent 8 years staying by his side. But before I could even get a real proposal, our relationship had reached its dead end. Sophie asked to meet me. At a cafe downtown, the moment she saw me, she instinctively put her hand over her belly. Her eyes were filled with fake fear. Chloe, I know you're mad at me. I'm sorry, but the baby is innocent. You wouldn't want him to grow up without parents like you did, right? Her eyelashes fluttered, and tears began to fall. Justin is good to me. He loves me. Chloe, you graduated from a top university. You're so strong. You can survive without anyone. But I can't. I stared at her in silence. Sophie suddenly grabbed my hand, begging in a low voice. If I lose Justin, I'll die. I shook my head. Sophie. Before I could finish, she suddenly let go of my hand and fell backward onto the floor. Justin rushed out from nowhere, shoved me aside, and pulled Sophie into his arms. He glared at me, his eyes burning with fury. Chloe, you psychopath. If you have a problem, take it out on me. I was the one who fell for Sophie first. She did nothing wrong. I was pushed to the floor. Something fell out of my bag and clattered on the ground. It was a small dagger. I looked down at the dull blade, my chest aching. Years ago, when Justin found the self-harm scars on my arm, he custom-ordered this dull dagger and gave it to me. Chloe, you need to face your fear to overcome it. I reached out and picked it up. Sophie shrieked, shielding Justin, her voice trembling. Chloe, I'm the one who hurt you. Leave Justin out of this. Holding the dagger, I took a step forward. Just one step. In the next second, I was violently shoved again. The back of my head hit the hard tile floor, and my brain started ringing. Through my blurry vision, I saw Justin shielding Sophie, walking away without looking back. His voice floated back in the wind, soft and gentle. Are you hurt anywhere? Sophie sobbed and shook her head. From beginning to end, he didn't look back at me once. The bell above the cafe door chimed, a cheerful, metallic sound that felt like a sharp mockery of the silence settling over me. The hard tile floor was freezing. I lay there for a long moment, the side of my face pressed against the cold ceramic, listening to the hum of the espresso machine and the low, awkward whispers of the patrons who had witnessed the scene. Miss? Oh my God, are you okay? A young waitress rushed over, her hands hovering over me in panic. I could feel a warm trickle of blood sliding down my temple, sticky and slow, matting into my hair. My brain throbbed with a dull, rhythmic ache, but my mind was clearer than it had been in years. I'm fine, I croaked, my voice sounding like dry paper. With the waitress's help, I slowly pushed myself up. My knees shook, but I forced them to lock. I looked down. The small, dull dagger, the one Justin had custom-made for me years ago, lay near my feet, its blunt blade reflecting the harsh fluorescent lights of the cafe. Chloe, you need to face your fear to overcome it. His voice echoed in my head, soft, therapeutic, and utterly suffocating. For years, I believed him. I believed that my trauma made me broken, and that his clinical, calculated remedies were the only things keeping me afloat. I believed that without his steady hand guiding me through the dark, I would drown. Now, looking at that useless piece of metal, I realized the truth. He didn't want me to heal. He wanted me to stay sick. A healthy, independent woman didn't need a savior, and Justin's entire identity was built on being the tragic hero who rescued the abandoned foster kid. When I finally grew strong, when I started building a career and standing on my own feet, he lost his grip on me. So he found Sophie. Broken, divorced, desperate Sophie. A fresh canvas for his savior complex. Do you want me to call an ambulance? The waitress asked, her eyes wide with concern as she handed me a stack of paper napkins. No, thank you, I said, pressing the napkins to my forehead. But could you do me a favor? Anything. I pointed at the dull dagger on the floor. Please throw that in the trash. I don't need it anymore. I gathered my bag, stood up, and walked out of the cafe. The autumn wind hit my face, sharp and biting. It washed away the suffocating scent of the cafe, the lingering smell of Justin's rose hair oil, and the faint, sweet perfume Sophie always wore. I felt light. For the first time in 10 years, the air entering my lungs belonged entirely to me. I didn't go back to the apartment. Instead, I checked into a quiet, mid-range hotel near the office and called a private clinic to get my head wound stitched and properly dressed. It was a minor concussion, the doctor said, advising rest. But I had no time to rest. Sitting on the edge of the hotel bed, with a white bandage wrapped around my head, I opened my laptop. The first thing I did was call Sarah, the HR director. Chloe, are you okay? Your voice sounds incredibly weak, Sarah said the moment she picked up. I'm fine, Sarah. I need to ask you about the resignation letter. You said it was rejected because my profile was already transferred to Chicago, correct? Yes, that's right. The system blocked it automatically because your transfer of authority was finalized last week. But Chloe, the letter? It was sent from your work email, but the IP address on the login log was from a residential network. And the writing style, it didn't sound like you at all. You've worked so hard for the director position. Why would you suddenly give it up for Sophie? I closed my eyes, a cold smile touching my lips. Justin had been so clever. He knew my passwords because we shared everything. He must have logged into my corporate portal while I was unconscious in the ER, drafting the resignation and attaching a forged recommendation letter for Sophie. He thought that by forcing me out of the company, he could hand Sophie my career on a silver platter while keeping me trapped at home as his dependent, docile wife. Sarah, I didn't write that resignation letter, I said, my voice steady and cold. My personal devices were accessed without my authorization while I was hospitalized. The signature on the recommendation letter for Sophie is a forgery. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. What? Chloe, are you serious? That's corporate fraud. If someone forged your signature and accessed your corporate account, it's a severe security breach. I have the hospital admission records proving I was unconscious and undergoing emergency treatment at the exact time that email was sent. I continued. I also have security footage, or at least I can get it, of the person who had access to my phone. I want to launch a formal investigation. I want the transfer to Chicago to proceed immediately, and I want the company's legal team to look into the forged documents. Say no more. Sarah's tone shifted from friendly concern to professional steel. Our legal department doesn't play around with identity theft and corporate fraud. I'll flag Sophie's pending application immediately. She was supposed to have her final interview with the regional VP tomorrow morning to seal the transition. I'll put a hold on it. Thank you, Sarah. I'll send you the hospital records and my official statement in 10 minutes. As I hung up, my phone began to buzz. It was a message from Justin. Chloe, where are you? You left the cafe without saying a word. Sophie is hysterical. She thinks you're going to do something drastic to yourself. Stop being so selfish. Call me back immediately. I stared at the screen. For 10 years, messages like this would have sent me into a panic, desperately trying to appease him, apologizing for things I didn't do just to keep him from looking at me with that cold, disappointed clinical glare. Now I felt absolutely nothing. I didn't reply. I didn't block him either. I wanted him to have a front row seat to the wreckage of his own making. I drafted a comprehensive email to the company's legal department, attaching my medical records, the timestamp of the unauthorized login, and a copy of the forged signature compared to my actual signature on my employment contract. I also BCC'd the regional director, who had always championed my career. Once the email was sent, I lay back on the bed. My head throbbed, but for the first time in a decade, I slept without nightmares. The next morning, the storm had cleared, leaving behind a crisp, bright autumn sky. I wore a high-collared black trench coat that hid the bandage on my head and walked into the corporate headquarters. As I stepped out of the elevator on the executive floor, I saw Sophie. She was standing outside the VP's office, wearing a soft, cream-colored knitted dress that made her look fragile and elegant. She had a designer bag looped over her arm, one that I'd bought her for her birthday last year. She was humming a small tune, a look of triumphant anticipation on her face. She was here for the final interview that would officially hand her my job. When she saw me, her hum cut off. Her eyes widened, landing instantly on the faint swelling near my temple. Chloe, she gasped, her voice dropping into that familiar, breathless whisper. She took a step toward me, her hands reaching out in a gesture of maternal concern. Oh my God, what happened to your head? Is it because of yesterday? I told Justin he shouldn't have pushed you, but he was just so worried about the baby. Save it, Sophie, I said, walking past her without slowing down. Chloe, wait. She hurried after me, her heels clicking rapidly on the polished floor. She grabbed my sleeve. Please don't be like this. I know you're angry about the job, but Justin did it for our future. He said you're strong enough to start over anywhere, but I have a baby to feed now. You've always been so generous to me. Why can't you just let me have this one thing? I stopped and slowly turned to face her. I looked at her hand clutching my sleeve, then up into her eyes. There was no remorse in them, only a desperate, greedy hunger cloaked in victimhood. This one thing is 10 years of my hard work, Sophie, I said softly. And it's not yours to take. Before she could respond, the door to the HR office opened. Sarah stepped out, accompanied by 2 men in dark suits from the corporate legal compliance team. Sophie Chun, one of the legal representatives asked, his face expressionless. Sophie blinked, a sweet smile instantly plastering over her face. Yes, I'm here for the VP interview. The interview has been canceled, Sarah said coldly. Please step into the conference room. We have some serious matters to discuss regarding unauthorized access to corporate networks, identity forgery, and security breaches. Sophie's smile faltered. She looked at Sarah, then at the legal team, and finally at me. The color drained from her face, leaving her looking sickly pale. I don't understand, she stammered, her voice shaking. There must be a mistake. Justin said everything was handled. We have digital forensics proving your IP address was used to access Chloe's account, and we have a forged recommendation letter signed in her name, the legal representative said. We have already notified the authorities. If you do not cooperate, the company will press charges.
No,
wait. Sophie panicked, her delicate facade instantly crumbling. She grabbed my arm tightly, her nails digging into my skin. Chloe, tell them you gave me the job. We're best friends. You wouldn't do this to me. I'm pregnant, Chloe. You can't do this to a pregnant woman. I gently but firmly pried her fingers off my arm, one by one. You're right, Sophie, I said, looking down at her. I wouldn't do this to a best friend. But you stopped being my friend the moment you decided to steal my life. I turned and walked into the adjacent office to finalize my transfer papers. Behind me, I could hear Sophie's frantic sobbing as she was escorted into the conference room. 2 hours later, my transfer to the Chicago branch was officially signed, sealed, and locked into the system. I was scheduled to board a flight the following Monday. As I walked out of the building, my phone rang. It was Justin. This time, I answered. Chloe, what the hell did you do? His voice exploded through the speaker, laced with a mixture of fury and absolute panic. Sophie just called me crying hysterically. She said HR had her escorted out of the building by security. They're threatening to file a police report for forgery. Have you lost your mind? She's pregnant. The stress could make her miscarry. She should have thought about her baby before she helped you forge my signature, Justin, I said, my voice completely flat. I did that for her, Justin yelled, his professional, calm therapist voice completely gone. She was depressed, Chloe. She had nothing after her divorce. You have a brilliant career, you have savings, you have everything. Why do you have to be so greedy? Why can't you just share a little bit of your success with someone who desperately needs it? Because it's mine, I replied. I earned it. Every single late night, every client meeting, every ounce of sweat. It belongs to me, not to you, and certainly not to her. You selfish bitch, he hissed. You've always been like this. Cold, calculating, ungrateful. If it weren't for me rescuing you from that orphanage, you'd be nothing. I built you, Chloe. I made you who you are. No, Justin, I said, feeling a strange sense of pity for him. You didn't build me. You just watched me build myself and took the credit. And now, you're going to watch everything you built fall apart. I hung up and blocked his number. Monday arrived with a quiet, gray fog. I stood in the empty apartment we had shared for 5 years. I had hired movers to pack up only my personal belongings, my books, my clothes, the painting I bought on my first business trip, and the small coffee machine I loved. The rest of the furniture, most of which I had paid for, I left behind. Let them have the hollow shell of a home. On the kitchen counter, I placed my house keys next to the velvet box containing the diamond ring he had used to propose to me in front of our friends. I didn't leave a note. There was nothing left to say. When I boarded the plane to Chicago, the engines roared to life, and the city below began to shrink into a grid of tiny lights. I looked out the window. A heavy weight, one I hadn't realized I was carrying for 10 years, evaporated into the clouds. Chicago welcomed me with a biting, freezing wind and a relentless energy. The Chicago branch of our company was undergoing a massive restructuring, and as the new director, my plate was overflowing. I threw myself into the work. I spent my days analyzing market reports, restructuring teams, and meeting with high-profile clients. My nights were spent in a beautiful, high-rise apartment overlooking Lake Michigan. The city was vast, cold, and beautiful. It didn't care about my past, my foster care status, or the man who had tried to control me. It only cared about my competence. And in that environment, I flourished. Within 3 months, the Chicago branch's performance metrics went up by 30%. My name was highlighted in the company's global newsletter. I was no longer Dr. Justin's fiancée or the quiet girl who survived a tough childhood. I was Chloe Lynn, the director who saved the Midwest division. Meanwhile, back in my hometown, the seeds I had planted began to sprout. One evening, while I was sipping hot tea by my floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the snow fall over the lake, my former colleague Sarah called me. "Chloe, you won't believe the drama going on here," she said, her voice buzzing with excitement. "What happened?" I asked, taking a sip of the tea. "You know how our legal department filed a formal complaint against Sophie for corporate fraud? Well, they didn't stop there. Because the forged recommendation letter was written on official stationery from Justin's private therapy clinic, the legal team flagged it to his licensing board." I leaned back in my chair. "Really?" "Yes. And it turns out, once the licensing board started investigating Justin's clinic, they found a mountain of ethical violations. Apparently, he had been counseling Sophie, his romantic partner, and charging her insurance, which is a massive conflict of interest. On top of that, several former patients came forward when they saw the public investigation. They accused him of psychological manipulation, boundary crossing, and using his position of power to control them. I felt a cold shiver of validation go down my spine. I wasn't the only one. He had done this to others. He targeted vulnerable women, using his clinical expertise to make them dependent on him under the guise of therapy. "What's the verdict?" I asked. "His license has been temporarily suspended pending a full hearing," Sarah said. "His private practice is basically dead. No one wants to go to a therapist accused of abusing his patient's trust. And Sophie, well, she was officially fired from her entry-level position here. Because of the fraud investigation on her record, no reputable company will hire her. She's stuck." "And the baby? That's the craziest part." Sarah lowered her voice. "My friend in HR saw some medical documents Sophie submitted before she was let go, trying to claim medical leave. The dates didn't align with her divorce. There are rumors flying around that the baby isn't even Justin's. It might belong to her ex-husband or some other guy she was seeing right before the divorce was finalized. Justin is losing his mind trying to get paternity tests, but Sophie is refusing." I stared at my reflection in the window. The girl in the glass looked calm, poised, and utterly detached from the chaos. "Thank you for telling me, Sarah," I said gently. "You deserve to know, Chloe. You built a life out of nothing, and they try to drag you back down. I'm just glad justice is finally doing its job." Winter in Chicago was brutal, but I grew to love the biting cold. It made me feel alive. One Friday evening in February, after a long week of board meetings, I walked out of my office building. The snow was falling in heavy, silent flakes, coating the streets in a thick blanket of white. I popped open my black umbrella and stepped onto the sidewalk. "Chloe." A voice called out from the shadows near the entrance. It was a voice I recognized instantly, yet it sounded entirely different, hollow, desperate, and trembling. I stopped and turned. Justin was standing there. He wore a heavy wool coat that looked too big for him, as if he had lost a significant amount of weight. His hair, usually styled to perfection, was damp and messy. The confident, smug expression he always wore was completely gone, replaced by deep dark circles under his eyes and a look of sheer exhaustion. "Justin," I said, my voice as cold as the wind blowing off the lake. "What are you doing here?" He took a step toward me, his hands reaching out, but stopped when he saw the complete lack of warmth in my eyes. "I drove all the way from home," he whispered, his breath puffing into the freezing air. "I had to see you. You blocked my number, my emails. I had no other way to reach you. We have nothing to talk about." I turned to walk away. "Chloe, please," he begged, his voice cracking. He rushed in front of me, blocking my path. "Please, just give me 5 minutes. I'm begging you." I looked at him, feeling a strange sense of irony. Months ago, I was the one begging him for an explanation, the one shivering on a cold hospital floor while he walked away with Sophie. Now, he was the one standing in the freezing snow, pleading for a sliver of my attention. 5 minutes, I said, checking my watch. "And we stay out here." Justin swallowed hard, his eyes scanning my face, looking for any trace of the girl who used to worship him. He found none. "I made a mistake, Chloe," he stammered, his hands shaking. "A terrible, horrific mistake. Sophie, she manipulated me. She used my clinical empathy against me. She played the victim, told me she was depressed, made me feel like I was the only one who could save her. I got caught up in it. I lost my way." "You didn't lose your way, Justin," I said calmly. "You found exactly what you wanted. You wanted a woman who was broken enough to make you feel like a god. You got bored of me because I didn't need your saving anymore." "No, that's not true," he cried, tears finally spilling over his cold flushed cheeks. "I love you, Chloe. I've always loved you. These past few months have been a living hell. The licensing board suspended my practice. I have no income. The apartment is gone because I couldn't pay the rent. And Sophie, he let out a bitter, self-deprecating laugh. The baby, it isn't mine. She admitted it last week. It's her ex-husband's. She just wanted to use me to get a green card of stability, to get your job, to get a lifestyle she didn't have to work for. Once she realized my license was suspended and I had no money left, she packed her bags and moved back to her parents' town. She abandoned me, Chloe. I listened to him, my heart remaining completely still. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and I meant it. I was sorry that he had to experience the pain of being discarded by someone he trusted. But I felt no urge to comfort him. Chloe, we can start over, Justin pleaded, taking a desperate step closer. He reached out to grab my hand, but I stepped back, keeping my umbrella between us. You're the director here now. You have a beautiful apartment, a great salary. I can move to Chicago. I can rebuild my practice here. We can be a family again. Remember what I told you when we were in college? I will never leave you. I'm here, Chloe. I'm back. I looked at him, and for the first time, I saw him clearly. He wasn't a savior. He wasn't a brilliant therapist. He was just a small, parasitic man who fed on the strength of others. When his own life collapsed, he didn't try to rebuild it himself. He flew across the country to find the woman he had discarded, hoping to parasite off her success once again. Justin, I said, my voice quiet but incredibly firm. When I was 19, I called your hotline because I wanted to end my life. You helped me. For that, I will always be grateful. But I paid you back with 8 years of my devotion, my love, and my youth. We are even. Chloe, please. The girl you rescued from the orphanage is dead, I continued, looking him straight in the eyes. You helped kill her. But the woman standing in front of you today? She doesn't need a savior. She definitely doesn't need you. I adjusted my grip on my umbrella and stepped around him. Wait. Chloe, you can't just leave me like this. He screamed behind me, his voice echoing through the snowy street. I made you. You'd be nothing without me. You're just an unwanted foster kid. I kept walking. His words, which once would have pierced my heart like a dagger, now felt like nothing more than the howling of the winter wind. They had no power over me anymore. I didn't look back. I walked back to my apartment. The lobby was warm, smelling of pine, and expensive wood polish. The doorman smiled and wished me a good evening. As I rode the elevator up to the 32nd floor, I looked at my reflection in the polished metal doors. My cheeks were flushed from the cold, and my eyes were bright and clear. The bandage on my head was long gone, leaving only a tiny, faint scar near my hairline. A small reminder of the day I finally stood up for myself. I unlocked my apartment door. The lights turned on automatically, casting a warm, golden glow over the minimalist decor. I kicked off my boots, hung up my trench coat, and walked over to the floor-to-ceiling windows. Below me, the city of Chicago stretched out like a galaxy of amber lights, the dark expanse of Lake Michigan meeting the snowy horizon in the distance. My phone buzzed. It was an email from the Global CEO's office. Dear Chloe, in light of your exceptional performance in turning around the Midwest division over the last quarter, the board of directors has unanimously voted to fast-track your promotion to Executive Vice President of North American Operations, effective next month. I stared at the screen for a long moment. No one had handed this to me. No fiancé had signed my name. No best friend had manipulated her way into it. I had earned every single bit of it. I set the phone down on the counter and walked over to the kitchen. I boiled some water, selected a rich, fragrant black tea, and poured it into a delicate ceramic mug. I wrapped my hands around the warm mug. For years, Justin had texted me, "Drink some hot tea. Your hands and feet get cold easily. Keep warm." He had always told me what to do, making me believe I was too fragile to take care of myself. But as I stood by the window, watching the snow fall gently over the city, I realized something. My hands weren't cold at all. In fact, I had never felt warmer.